Welcome back, everybody, to Dist Media, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting a business from the ground up. And today, my guest is someone who I think everybody is going to learn something from because he's here to share with us what happens when your entire business model gets challenged. You know, a lot of founders talk about innovation, but very few have had to rebuild their business under pressure. And our guest today is living that moment and has lived that moment. He is founder of Uplift 360, an Australian digital agency focused on helping trade, construction, and service-based businesses get found, get trusted, and get chosen online. With over 20 years of experience in websites, SEO, and digital strategy, our guest today has built his business around practical marketing that delivers real results for everyday workers. So when he was told about that his business was worth less today because of the rise of AI, he immediately started getting to work and learning how to be smarter and working a little bit harder to kind of fight against what AI is doing to many of us. So I'd like you to welcome today to the show our guest, Mr. Wes Towers. Wes, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Ben. A little bit croaky, but I'm fine, and it's great to connect on the other side of the planet, isn't it? It's what we do these days with these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're a day ahead of us as we record this today,
Yeah.
um,
If you
which
want
is
any stock tips or you want to know what's going on in the sports, we can see if we can sort you out.
yeah. Well, it's funny. Yeah, I would love to ask about current events. I like to keep these things evergreen, though. So,
Yeah.
hopefully the world hasn't fallen apart by the time we put
Yeah,
this
who
out.
knows? It's crazy times. But it feels like we've been through one crazy journey to the next, so we're building resilience, aren't we?
It seems like, over the last little bit now, it is just whether it's AI, whether it's tariff threats, whether it's just global shenanigans going on, there always seems to be something in the mix that's affecting business and affecting the way we get things done.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, Wes, I want to dive into our topic today, but I first want to kind of touch on what are what are the things that kind of brought you to what you do today? Because we in the lead up, we talked about some of the challenges that you've been facing, but you've also got a lot of experience in the work that you've been doing. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of catching us up on what you've done previously and what has kind of brought you to what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, I've been running the digital agency for over 20 years, as you mentioned, and started pretty naively, like a lot of us do. I had a skill set. I knew how to design websites and build websites, but all the business side of things, I had no idea. So I've learned a lot of lessons the hard way and evolved and fumbled my way forward. And it's always felt like an industry that's changed fast, but obviously in the more recent times with AI transforming the way in which we can do tech, so we can build websites and so on. It's changed a lot, and so it was a real wake up call just a few years back when I got a business valuation done, and he suggested the value was a whole lot less simply because the whole industry was at threat. Now you kind of hear this stuff in the media, but we know we don't necessarily believe the media and everything that they say. But when an expert who's analysed the business thoroughly makes these suggestions, you sit up and take notice because no one wants to go out of business simply because some sort of software wiped them out.
Well, this is something that as a matter of fact, being here in the States, Donald Trump would often go on the news and talk about how great the stock market's doing. And me personally, I'm invested in a lot of things that are kind of pegged towards the future. A lot of AI, a lot of data center kind of stuff. Primarily just because I think that's where a lot of growth is going to be happening. But a lot of SaaS companies, for example, took a big hit because of AI and things like Anthropic and agentic AI, talking about all the workplace disruption that it's creating. A lot of companies like Google and Amazon letting go of a lot of work staff to make room for deeper investments in AI. So it is something that's been really shaking up a lot of businesses,
Yeah.
um, to the point where, and you mentioned that you had somebody evaluating the value of your business. And what was it that they saw that they found was going to be less valuable as you moved ahead?
Yeah. I suppose I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 years ago now. Everything's a bit of a blur, but when he said that, so it was just the start of everyone realizing the potential for it to do the software side of what we do. So we make websites is the primary focus of what we do, and we do optimization, but everything's hinged around websites. And when you've got vibe coding and so on the rise, and obviously back then it was in its infancy, and it still is to a large degree, but it was pretty self-evident that potentially one day people would be able to do the technical piece themselves just by speaking to their devices. And I mean, a friend of mine, he runs a mental health clinic, and he was looking for software as a service to run the clinic, and he ended up just vibe coding it. And so that's just one example of, because he couldn't find a solution that married up precisely with what he wanted to do. There was this software that did these aspects that he loved, and this one that did the others. And so he just vibe coded it. And so that's the potential for anything that we're doing, websites. So it makes obvious sense. I think it's pretty clear. If we're to stick in to the technical aspect of what we're providing, the technology, the programming and the building out of sites, well, that will soon diminish, and it's diminishing already. But if we're able to bring a new level of value and use AI to advantage, so systemize, we've reworked our standard operating procedures significantly off the back of what he said, and readied ourselves as best we can. Now, you never know precisely what the next opportunity might be in terms of software and opportunities. So you just make the best decisions and try and future-proof as best you can, and think about the way in which we can bring new levels of value to companies. So yeah, it's been pretty exciting.
I've had this conversation with some others when it comes to AI. And, as I think about this creative space, because I think a lot of the work that you do is probably there's technical, but there's also some creative element to it as well. Now, yes, vibe coding is great. I use AI a bunch. I work with data all the time. It's helping me do things so much faster than in the past. I, for example, work with Power BI a lot, and being able to use Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code with Power BI MCP with Claude plugged in, and just being able to like tell it what I need done, and it just goes and does all the stuff. It's
Yeah,
amazing, right?
yeah,
For things like that, it's really efficient. However, I will say, I've also kind of vibe coded a couple websites of my own. The problem I have is the same problem I have when it comes to working with writing or anything that is creative, in that it will give you a very vanilla output. Even when you prompt it to try and be creative, even if you want it to do something creative, it ultimately settles back down into, something that's very, kind of basic, if you will. And I've got to think that this is probably where your advantage of having 20 years of experience, knowing how to be creative outside of the limits of AI, that's got to be worth something.
yeah, definitely. And the other piece to that is it'll give you what you ask for, but that might not necessarily, and that sounds like a positive, and it can be, but it also can be a negative in that when you get expert advice. I'll give you an example. So a couple of weeks ago, we launched a website for a company who originally in the brief requested a whole lot of animation in their website. They wanted something fancy and elegant and to wow people. But they didn't understand the consequence of doing that from a marketing standpoint. It would make the user experience difficult to navigate. It would really impact the conversion rate tremendously. So whilst the directors had this end goal in mind to create something beautiful, also they wanted the conversion optimization done for them. So these competing views, if they were to jump on and try and do it themselves, no matter what the tools are, yes, they probably would produce the thing that they wanted to produce from a visual aesthetic and so on, but it wouldn't have produced the outcomes which they were really wanting, which is the return on investment. So that expert guidance, I think, is the key of what we provide now, that consultation type of scenario where I've been doing this a long time now, and I know what's going to convert to a large degree. There's always nuance in every business, but because we're so niched, we kind of get a sense of what's going to work and what's not going to work, and you can get results faster that way because you know what to try first. So that's kind of the danger. Yes, it gives you what you want, and it's probably going to get better and better at that, but the bias of it to tell you your ideas are great as well. It's always so affirming, and you've really got to, no matter what AI platform you're looking at, you've really got to ask it to be brutally honest all the time. It feels as though you keep having to remind it, be brutally honest if you're running, conceptual ideas past it and so on. So there's so many risks, and I think the expert guidance and advice is the piece, and that's the human element. So I really feel AI is pushing us to be more human than ever before, and to be relating to people and understanding their true needs and interpreting it in a meaningful way, not just giving them what they want. Sometimes you got to. There's an interesting phrase. Sometimes you got to sell people what they want in order to give them what they need, which is a curious thing, but someone might come looking for a wonderful, amazing animated website, but what they really need after having a conversation is leads and sales through the marketing mechanisms. So I think that's another way of looking at it.
I've kind of spoken about this too in the past, is that you have to know what it is you want from a technical standpoint, not just, just kind of an open-ended kind of question standpoint. So if you think about the word two, right? You can spell it three different ways and it has a different meaning each time. And
Yeah,
so, kind of similar with AI, like you can tell it to do something, and to your point, it will give you what it believes you want, but it may not necessarily be able to understand some of the nuances of that in between. And I think anybody who's worked with a client, who's created a spec document, who's built what the client asked for, only to be told that's not what they wanted,
yeah,
and having to rework and redo, and the kind of the back and forth. I can only imagine AI trying to figure out this same person, who's trying to vibe code something. You
yeah.
have to have some knowledge and experience of what it is you're asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I see it is it could be so powerful for your minimum viable product in terms of an online experience. I mean, we worked on a pretty sophisticated website. It was the concept a few years back now, and it was quite an investment from the client side, and it was an enjoyable project because it was really quite complex. But unfortunately, the business model just didn't work. So the customer base just didn't want the thing that it was delivering. So the client wasn't aware of that, obviously, until he launched and invested a whole bunch of money. But you can just imagine, I mean, that very system that we delivered back, yeah, it would have been before AI was even a thought. AI's been around a long time, but before it was available to all of us, um, you know, things would be much better these days. He could have launched it with a very minimal investment, even if it wasn't perfect, and he would have quickly realized, hey, this business model isn't going to fly. So I think that's the massive advantage, that you can try things quickly and figure out what's going to fail, what's going to work. And if something can work to a degree, even if it's not perfect, if once it's polished up, it could be pretty powerful.
So let me ask you this. You kind of hinted a little bit that you've gone a little bit more consultative with the work that you've done. Are there
Yeah.
any other changes that you've made that have really proven out some of the value proposition of what you guys do?
Yeah, so we've shifted the emphasis a little bit. It's always been a core focus for our clientele, our niche, building trust has always been important, simply because, in construction trades, you need a high level of trust for people to make an investment sometimes in these things. And also, if it's home services, you want a high level of trust that people coming into your home are trustworthy. So, and it feels as though trust is being eroded significantly because we can't necessarily trust what we read. We can't trust what we see in terms of the imagery or the videos. I mean, it's pretty exciting to see videos of people who have long passed, and they look super realistic. We know they're not real because they're long past, but that's also frightening and terrifying because we can't trust anything anymore. And so also because construction related businesses had a really difficult time here in Australia, a lot went out of business. So, and as you can imagine, if you're halfway through building your dream family home and then the builder is out of business, you're left in the lurch, and that's super stressful. So building trust and authority and recognition, these are old school marketing principles, but it feels as though there's less and less of the clickbait type, lead magnet idea that works. It doesn't work to the same degree in which it did. It's not a linear path anymore, that sales funnel. People can do their own research. People can get their own information through AI. It's about a matter of publishing quality content about your business so it can be found and learned in AI platforms. It's just like search engine optimization. We used to do everything we possibly could to attract Google's attention. But the good news is that information that we would publish to attract their attention is useful in large language models. So to optimize for all the tools that people could possibly use to find a business like yours has been a big change for us to think about not just Google, but think about large language models.
Yeah, well, between LLMs, voice search, that's another one that is kind of out there, and then there's this emerging trend that I keep hearing about, which is have your content in multiple places and post, like especially if you're doing stuff on social media, post across multiple accounts multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's becoming more work because there's more noise and you need more volume to kind of break through that noise.
Yeah, incredibly difficult, isn't it? Because everyone's got access to the same tools to syndicate the same information far and wide. So you've got to be really deliberate and intentional about what your core messages are, so it resonates firstly, and realize there's probably going to be a bunch of touch points before the potential customer reaches out. For us, most of our clientele are not selling an impulse buy. It's not a $10 widget that you can just buy online. It's something that of higher value. So there's going to be some level of human connection and relationship. So everything we do is geared around creating that connection. So everything we do on social media for our clients would be to drive people back to the website. So from the website perspective, everything we do on the website is geared around creating a human connection. So that for the most part, that's the strategy. So in a curious way, AI is forcing us to be more human than ever before.
If you had asked me 10 or 12 years ago, I would have said, forget about websites. Everybody just goes to Facebook, right? Like that's where people were just looking for things and they would just search Facebook for stuff. And now it's the pendulum swinging the other way. Websites are alive and well. And now it's about getting your content to get recognized, as you mentioned, by the large language models. And they're not going to find it on Facebook because,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why that becomes a barrier to I don't want to say Facebook is a barrier to your success, but if you're trying to get found online or through an LLM, I don't know that Facebook is really serving up many pages for people to find, your content on Facebook.
Yeah, 100%. So it's all about the authority in which the content is perceived to have in Google and LLMs. So your website is an authoritative space, and it's a place where you can dig deeper into the information that might be useful. See, all the tools are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to serve up the very best information for whatever the conversation, because a lot of these things are conversational. whatever the conversation is, they need that very best information. That's what their whole structure is dependent on. So it's about fueling that. So we're writing content, obviously, for the end human reader, of course. That's the priority. But the good news is if you write really well and it's useful and meaningful to your target audience, the large language models will realize that, and you'll have the potential to show up. We had a client recently who discovered he won one of his better clients. I think it was $120,000 investment, that initial investment, and he's just a consultant, so it's just him. It's a pretty big piece of work for one person. But he discovered that they found him through ChatGPT. The person was looking for a specific type of consultant for a specific need. They were a plumbing organisation, and they had a lengthy conversation with a ChatGPT, just like a lot of us do. I do the same. And at the end of it, they said, "Well, who's the very best in Australia who provides this service?" And up came our client, as ChatGPT said he was the best in Australia. So if ChatGPT believes it, so does the end reader, and he probably is, honestly. So, but he had to be found there, right? And so the challenge is that's more difficult to track and measure. Back in the old school days, it was so cool that we could just provide charts of Google and the rankings of where you're positioned and how much traffic you're getting and the conversion rate of that, and what that meant as a sale, and the return on investment was so easily trackable. But these days, people are coming at you from multiple angles. They're having conversations about your business that you don't even know about. So you've got to have that information out there ready for it to be surfaced in all the right places.
And at that, the algorithms are always updating to, prevent a lot of this AI embedded kind of work. I mean, it's like AI gets smart, and then the search algorithms have to get a little bit wiser so that we don't get fooled into kind of being trusted when that may not necessarily be the thing to trust at the moment.
Yeah.
What, Wes, let me ask you something, because one of the things you kind of talk about is getting found and kind of earning trust and then being chosen. How do you build that for people that you work with?
Yeah, so it's really about amplifying what's already being said in a positive manner online. So attracting as many Google reviews as you possibly can is a simple one to try and achieve. Simply because people, if you've done a great service or provided a great product, and people are happy, they're probably not going to remember to leave you a Google review. But if with a gentle nudge, gentle prompt, they probably will, because people are good-hearted for the most part and like to help other people. So with that gentle nudge, you can earn these trust factors. The other thing to consider too, as you say, people are talking about your business, whether you know about it or not. On social media, people will reach out on Facebook, for example, and say, "Hey, do you know a great person who provides X, Y, Z in our location?" So there's that word of mouth. Recognition, but also just on the street. I mean, I was in the car park, the parking underneath the apartment, and just overheard a conversation where a tradesperson of some description was having a chat to one of the tenants or owners in the building, and asking who the best builders were in town. He was just rattling off a whole bunch of names who were horrible and who was great. That kind of word of mouth is happening offline, but it's also happening online. So it's a matter of trying to get as much as the positive information out there published, and simple things you can do that only you can do are the best. So if you're working on amazing projects, it's just about showcasing those projects. We picked up another client who'd worked on some pretty incredible buildings. Recognised buildings probably around the world. Certainly in Australia, everyone knew the buildings, but they hadn't mentioned it anywhere online. So it was just a matter for them to have case studies and stories within their website, and all of a sudden, these trust factors. You can see the buildings they've created, and they're a quality outfit, that they've done all these other people have trusted them. these larger entities, they're probably a trustworthy organization to choose for your own projects.
So, we've danced around AI, kind of beat up a little bit on AI. Where do you see AI helping in some of this strategy? Even though I know it's a little bit of it's a love-hate relationship with AI, right? So, but what are some of the ways that it can actually help break through some of the noise?
Yeah, well, I mean, behind the scenes, we're using it to a large degree to do the technical aspect of what we do, and our programmers are using Claude and so on it's just so much easier to from a technical standpoint to if there's a problem in coding or something, it can find it super quick and fix it in a matter of
Yeah.
seconds. So that kind of thing is obviously it's hugely beneficial to what we do. But yeah, to from the marketing standpoint, the challenge, as we said before, the noise is just increased tremendously. So having a core marketing message that resonates with somebody, and that's why I think niching is the way to go moving forward. It's always been powerful, but certainly for a smaller business who can afford to focus on a niche can be really recognized and known in that field. And the good news is you only need to be better than your competitors. So there's so many things you could do to enhance your visibility, for example. But if you're in a small town, you're let's say you're an electrician and there's only one or two other electricians. Realistically, you only need to be better than they are. So that helps to defeat some of the overwhelm that we're all experiencing because it's difficult to make a decision to move forward when there's just an opportunity overwhelm and overload. How do we make a decision and realizing tomorrow there's going to be better opportunities as well, likely. So how do you set yourself on one direction and path, knowing something's better in the pipeline. So just challenges. I think that's where the entrepreneurial mindset, even if you're an employee, and even if you're just on a employed career path and trajectory, think about your skill set and how it might adapt and apply to a different scenario, is going to be really helpful. So, those that can think creatively and forward project what might be about to happen in their career path are going to be the big winners. But there's going to be a massive amount of losers, I can imagine. That's unfortunate, but you just got to ready yourself as best you can and be at the forefront of what's happening.
It's interesting. The adoption of AI, I mean, it's been just incredible.
Mm.
But there's also a lot of resistance. I'm not sure how the landscape is there in Australia, but at least here in the US, there's a lot of pushback against data centers, which I
Right.
think it's funny because people get online and complain about data centers. But a lot of pushback on data centers. There's a lot of pushback on AI, and there's people who are just actively doing their best to avoid it, which honestly I think is a huge mistake because
Yeah.
it is here. There's no putting it back, and I think that in other parts of the world, it's going to be leveraged incredibly. Like if you look at what they're doing
Mm.
in China, in Japan, and other parts of the world where they see the efficiency gains, they see the productivity gain. Yes, it's hard. Again, going back to it's hard to use for some really creative stuff, but over time that's going to change. And I think that unless you learn it, unless you understand it, unless you learn how it operates, it's going to be really difficult to catch up because it changes so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, if I've had a busy full-on week and things don't feel like they went according to plan quite so much, I feel like I just want to become an Amish and go and forget about technology altogether. Those moments of things that not going according to plan happen to all of us, but realistically, all of us need to understand it to a degree and apply it where it makes sense. And one of the key things that I did in this evolution of introducing AI as a tool, but also to optimize to get our clients recognized in those platforms, is to bring my team in to have a voice in how we went about things. Because historically, the business over 20 years, every standard operating procedure was built around what I felt was best. Because I started small, I started as me, and I built ways in which I thought was best, and then team applied those same strategies, and they evolved over time with new opportunities and so on. But I'd never introduced the team to say, "Hey, what do you see? What are you understanding? What could we adjust and change?" And that's how the standard operating procedures improved tremendously because all of a sudden I gave voice to people who are technical. They're technical people. They understand this stuff and they geek out watching, the latest YouTube on different opportunities. And so it was the biggest win. And I felt so foolish that I didn't introduce them into the conversation earlier. But in hindsight, I could have done a lot better sooner if I had have opened those conversations up and had a listening ear to my team.
When you think about yes, I think bringing in other voices and allowing people to kind of participate in the process always beneficial, not just for bringing in new ideas, but I think it really helps people get connected to the work that you're doing.
Yeah,
Um, Given the evolution that you've gone through, given the fact that you kind of got a gut punch in the valuation, you've withstood that, you're building back stronger in this element that we've seen all of these influences from AI, all of these different changes, all the different ways the algorithms are evolving online. How are you breaking through? Are there any moments recently where you've deployed something, done something new that really kind of stood out, got traction maybe unexpectedly, or you tried something new and turned out it worked out okay?
yeah. There's lots of micro little wins. So nothing, no one specific thing from a technology standpoint that I would say was a massive lever, but just micro changes in the software stack in which we're using. Probably the human-sided conversation I'm having has evolved quite a lot, and the initial conversation with a lot of the founder-led businesses is around it's almost like a venting session. So I've discovered, we used to ask, potential clients, what their uniqueness was in the market and what they're trying to provide and what their best work looks like and what they want to attract more of and so on. But I flipped it and got them speaking about what frustrates them about the industry and the business and all the negative side. And I discovered that they speak of these things far more emotionally and honestly, and the conversation is there's a whole lot more substance and depth to it. Now, these conversations would never be public, but when you reveal that darkness, the dark side, the light is so much more obvious. So discovering all that darkness, we can flip it around and realize, well, what's the inverse opposite of those things that they really despise in their industry? And it highlights the uniqueness in them. So we frame it in a positive light, of course, and use that messaging throughout their marketing material. And so that's been the biggest play. And I got that I got that from studying a little bit of psychology. I had a bit of a terrible time a few years back and saw a psychologist and was studying a lot of that. And so the idea of that came out of the understanding of shadow and shadow work. And so I just applied that application, understanding everyone has some darkness in them, and to understand the light better, you just reveal the darkness. So yeah, that's the biggest play. It's more of a human intuitive process, but I think that's where true value is these days. We can use those tools and technology to enhance what we're doing, but that human element and human touch of insight is powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really buy into authenticity.
Yeah,
It's interesting as a marketer trying to figure out the best way to market without coming off as if you're trying to market.
yeah,
There's such a rejection of that.
yeah,
And building that voice of authenticity as well as authority, right? That
yeah.
seems to be the trick.
We're all detecting. Even my daughter, she's 13. She'll bump into different things that she realizes is AI straight away. And there's this dis dislike and distrust of it. So even with her, so I think that's happening all around. When we don't necessarily think something's authentic, then we don't like it so much. The other curious thing with her is the teachers at her school tell her not to use, tell the whole class not to use AI and so on to do their homework. But in the homework briefing or whatever you call it, the instructions, oftentimes there'll be ChatGPT on the URL. So all the kids know, hey, the teachers are using it to create their homework, but we're not allowed to use it to answer the homework, which is which is a funny sort of scenario.
I teach. I've been teaching at the collegiate level for about 20 years now, and everybody has gotten so much wiser in the last 2 or 3 years, to the point where it used to be that I would have, because I do a lot of teaching online, and we have asynchronous classes. So people kind of come in as they can, and they
Yeah.
post, like, I have a discussion question. And man, everybody's discussion questions started looking the same. And I just got to the point where now what I do is I still have discussion questions, but then I pull them up, during a class session and I go over them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this one sounds just like this one and looks just like this one. And I try to emphasize the fact that, yeah, it's okay that we use, it's like using Google or any other search engine, but we've got to put our own stamp on it. We have to have our own personality embedded in it. Otherwise, it looks like everybody else's answer.
Yeah.
I think more and more, even companies, like when you think about what have we heard for so many years, when you see a job posting, tailor your resume to that job posting. And that used to be a big hassle like 5 years ago. But now, copy the posting, copy your resume, have, whatever tool, spit out something different. And I've got to imagine like HR people are pulling their hair out going like, everybody sounds the same.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So the recruitment process is they've been using software to shortlist applicants for a long time now, and based on keywords and so on. But imagine how sophisticated it is now, and so people are creating their resumes and applications through AI, and then AI is assessing them. It's kind of a bizarre scenario. AI, assessing AI. So you just got to find ways to stand out. As you say, if you rely upon the tools too much, there's the risk that you'll come out sounding like everybody else. So having the authentic thought leadership within whatever you're producing, whether it be a resume or something to do with a business, having that genuine input and using the tool to polish it, I would say, or to bring it into a structure that's more meaningful and people can understand. That's where the gold is. But because it's so tempting just to rely upon the tool to do the heavy lifting for you, and you're not doing the thinking yourself, that I think there's that's always going to be a temptation moving forward. So we just need to be better at what we're doing and find other ways to stand out.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I think this is why there's a moment where AI kind of came in, disrupted a little bit of what you do, but I think it's going to swing back the other way, primarily because these tools are all going to start to sound the same. Everybody's marketing message is going to sound the same. The algorithms won't find the uniqueness in it, and it's going to pass you over because it's going to be looking for what stands out, what's unique, what's niche, what
Yeah,
is the personality of this message. And if you don't have one because it was all crafted out of AI, as a matter of fact, YouTube is even going through right now, and they're purging a lot of content because lack of creativity. It's all AI voiceover with just B-roll footage and nothing genuine or authentic about it. So
yeah.
as I think about that, have you experienced people coming to you and kind of realizing that their marketing message isn't working
Yeah.
and kind of asking you guys how to improve upon that?
All the time, and that's part of the challenge with all of us is we can't see our own things, our own business as well as an external party might, and certainly from an expertise knowledge in a certain area of business, we just I don't I can't see the flaws and gaps in my own business a lot of the time. So I need to draw upon insights from other people who see it because they're not so close to it. Sometimes you need to be able to step back. So speaking into people's businesses from that perspective, from an external opinion, is really helpful. And when you've got lots of experience, it's really helpful. I really think it would be difficult if I were to rewind when I was just starting in that first marketing company. I think there was just so much I learned the hard way going through those processes that you had to do and figure out even the technology. You learned so much because it was difficult. I think there's benefit in the struggle. And so I wonder how the younger generation are going to come through. It's a different struggle, I suppose, but I wonder how you get that base of knowledge. It's going to be built differently, isn't it? It's just an interesting way of considering what's this like all my best growth moments came out of some form of struggle. So and my career path, it came through struggle and to figure out what to do next. So that some of those struggle pieces early on might be diminished because we can get the answers quickly, but there's just going to be different struggles and challenges, I think.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. I remember in school, a teacher told me one time that they learned the most from the classes they didn't do the best in.
Yeah,
And I think that's very true. Just it's a lesson of life that the struggles you face, the things you overcome, teach you so much more about how to be better at that thing
yeah,
than if you just kind of have a natural affinity towards it.
yeah. It's just part of how we grow as well. Just rewinding back to thinking about how I started in the career, things that might have derailed me early on don't derail me anymore. And you've built resilience, and you know a path forward because you've kind of seen similar scenarios. Um, yeah, that's what keeps things exciting, I think.
Yeah, the benefits of wisdom and experience.
Yeah, yeah,
So, Wes, let me ask you this one. Something I always like to ask folks is, what is the thing right now that you're most excited about that gets you up in the morning and makes you excited about going to work?
well, I'm just a people person. I enjoy conversations. That's why I love podcasting. So, I mean, being in Australia, the time zone difference can sometimes mean I'm up at crazy hours of the morning. But because I love it so much, like I might get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, so I can get ready for the podcast. I love those human connections, and what AI has meant is a lot of the things I used to do have become more systemized, and because it's more easily systemized, the team can do it at a higher level without my input. I think I was a massive bottleneck. So I'm loving that I've got more time to invest in human conversations, whether that be through podcasts or going to networking groups and conversations and even just coffees and lunches with people where I can. I'm really loving that human side of relationship building, and it gets me up early, keeps me up late at night, but I'm loving it.
It's funny. I'll tell you. So I work from home primarily. Well, really, I work from home. In my 9 to 5 job, when I'm teaching, I teach online. So I have a home office, and I'm in it for hours upon hours a day. And one of the reasons that I started getting this podcast, I've been doing it for 3 years, but only probably in the last 6 to 8 months have I really said, you know what, I'm no longer out meeting people.
Yeah,
The company that I do my primary work for, I am the only employee in the state I live in, and everybody else is kind of remote. We all work remotely, and you know, so there's no office, there's no break room, there's no interaction with other people outside of the conference calls that you have or the Zoom calls that you have. And I also work with counterparts in Italy, so they're several hours ahead of me, or I have some colleagues out west in California, so they're several hours behind me. But so I say that because my hours of working really just kind of I just work. I don't, it's because I could
Yeah,
be talking to somebody in a different time zone, like any part of my day. And
yeah,
so I will say, I love talking to folks from Australia because, like my late evening is your early morning.
yeah,
And I usually find that, it works out pretty well.
yeah,
I did a podcast recently with somebody who was based in India, and it was 3 in the morning their time when we were doing this podcast. I felt so bad. Like,
yeah, yeah. A lot of
keeping them up.
Yeah, well, oftentimes in those places they might work through the night because they'll oftentimes work to the states timing and so on if that's where their clientele are coming from. So, but it's got certainly massive advantages, but there's something special also in my view to be in the same room as people. So, I mean,
Yes.
through the horrible COVID times and so on, we all learned to have Zoom meetings and online meetings in general. So, which is great because it stops you driving around and wasting time. But there's something special about getting in a room and even for a casual conversation that I really enjoy too.
Press the flesh, as they
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
Yeah, it's yeah. I would much prefer talking to people in person for sure. But when you're locked away in your home all day in your home office all day, you'll take any contact you can just because you kind of yearn for it after a while.
yeah, yeah. The loneliness in working for yourself or remotely from home is a really big deal in my view. The isolation. So I think that's a big part of. There's so many benefits of people working from home. They're pushing for that right now here in Victoria, Australia, um, because traveling and fuel can be a challenge, and they're trying to reduce the use of that. Um, so there's a push to work from home, but there's that risk of loneliness in people, and just to stay, you've got to find ways to stay connected. If you're the one uh, quietly by yourself, or if you're a leader of some description with team that are remote. To make sure you somehow stay in contact and stay connected. So if there are concerns that you would probably intuitively pick up if you're in the same room, people have challenges and life circumstances and family concerns and health and all of that can impact them tremendously. And sometimes we might not pick that up if we're all working remotely. So new challenges, maybe that's one of the challenges we can get better at solving.
So let me ask you this: given the amount of time you've been working with Uplift 360, if you had to build it again today, how would you approach it?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think well, some of the things that I did worked and some didn't work in the early days for sure in terms of trying to go to market. Um, and it depends on what you're rich in. If you're time rich, uh, networking is the best thing you can do to grow a business and get in the room with other people who know how to do what you're doing, but also potential buyers of whatever you're selling. Build using your time in that way. If I was in that going to Rewind, that's where I'd spend all my time. Now, of course, building an online presence, that's what I can do myself. So I've got that advantage. So yeah, I'd probably focus more on building relationships with people who know stuff a whole lot sooner. I kind of stumbled upon networking by accident. So I wish I had done it a little bit sooner.
When I started Dist Media, I put a lot of focus and attention on starting this business as a online kind of business publication that people would read. And then I realized at some point that not everybody loves to read stuff. They would much rather listen and watch stuff than read it. And I think had I known then what I know now, like I spent so much time focused on website and SEO and building that traffic. The moment I switched to audio and video, got a lot more eyeballs, got a lot more interest, and things have been on much more of a growth track. So as I kind of look back, I'm like, man, so many things I would have done different. Like, just I wouldn't have invested so much time in a website. I would have paid way more attention to building a YouTube channel, building a social media kind of media angle over some of that other stuff. But I think
Yeah.
that's, again, you talk about niche. I think that's for the audience that I'm trying to reach and the people I'm trying to get in front of. That's just what interests them. Like that's where they are.
Yeah, that's it. And different mediums suit different circumstances. A curious thing, so I wrote a book about, I think it must be 11 years ago now. And the sales were typically pretty 50-50 between the physical, the paperback, and the ebook. But then it moved more to ebooks, and now it seems to have switched back to more physical books. So I think different mediums serve different purposes, and it feels to me as though there's a hunger for the tangible. And sometimes you read something on a screen differently to you would on a physical piece of paper. You know, you're kind of leaning back when you read. You might be on the couch. You're in a different frame of mind. So the content is really impacted by the context in which it's being consumed. So the beauty of YouTube or something like that, people are leaning back. They can watch on their television if they want to, or they can watch on their devices. They can see it remote, when they're out and about, even if they want to. Maybe they're on the treadmill at the gym and they can watch things. So, yeah, I think that's the power of it. It's just so digestible in so many different ways.
I say this a little tongue in cheek, but I realize that people don't like to read. And as someone, in a previous episode kind of put it, and I think this is very true, it's not that they don't want to read. It's just that you're trying to get in front of them at a moment when that's really not what they're kind of in the mood to do, right? So if your angle is to try and grab eyeballs through social media, when people are scrolling, right? They're not in that mode of like, oh, let me take 4 or 5 minutes out of my day and read this long article.
Yeah.
It's generally not what people are doing when they're scrolling. They're looking at headlines, they're looking at a few bullet points. They'll get about 2 paragraphs in and then they bail and on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's right. It's got to be super interesting or appealing to them right at that very moment. Solve some sort of problem that they've got right then for anyone to
yeah,
invest the time to read a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah.
100%, 100%. Well, Wes, as we kind of move towards wrapping this up, I want to make sure that people know where to find you, where to get a hold of you, some of the other things that you're involved in and doing.
Yeah, uplift360.com.au is the website, the AU for Australian, being an Australian business, but we do serve clients all around the world. In fact, if you did go on the website, you'd see a bunch of brands, global brands that's probably some people will recognise, mostly trades, construction, industrial kind of brands that we work with. And people can book a strategy call with me there. It's free. Other things, social, I'm really active on LinkedIn. We're as a business across all the social platforms, but LinkedIn is probably the go-to, and I'll connect with anyone who puts in a connection request. There's no problems with that.
Nice. I am the same way, but I will tell you, and I learned this term. I heard this term. I thought it was an excellent way of putting it. I hate the pitch slappers.
Yeah.
so so the people who connect with you and like instantly like want to try and sell you something.
Yeah, do you want to buy my thing? A random person, friend request, next second they're trying to sell you something. That happens, but yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know how effective that stuff must be, but probably a number.
I don't know either, but yeah, ever since I've been doing this podcast and putting things out there, the number of people, and it's funny because I actually had a guy reach out to me recently on LinkedIn and he said, hey, because I guess they saw my book, right? So he's like, have you ever thought of doing a podcast? We have a whole team that'll set you up. And I'm like, well, you really don't know anything about me.
Yeah.
Because if you did, you'd know that like I'm putting them out several times a week right now. So,
Yeah, that's right. It's the targeting was correct in some ways, but a mismatch in others. So
well, Wes, it is, I will say it's been a pleasure getting to know you and some of the work that you're doing. Yeah, well, definitely. I feel like I need to have a call with, put a panel together of all my Australian contacts now because I've had a few. and everybody get on the line and, hash out some more of this social media and marketing and SEO stuff for folks.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah, happy for you to connect me with any of those people, really, if you feel there's a connection. But also, I'd say to this podcast, anyone listening, that share it with someone who you feel as they might benefit from it, because we're all going through our journey of our career path and our businesses, and I think sharing it with a friend or a family member that might benefit, it can be a real advantage. It's free to do that, and think about the people around you in your world that might benefit from this podcast.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Wes, let me ask you something, because you mentioned a book. Anything to plug in that arena? I know you mentioned it's a couple years old.
Yeah, it's 11 years old now, but it's still applicable. So it was written before AI, but it's The Simple Manifesto. You'll find it on Amazon, both the physical, the paperback and the ebook. So it's all about marketing principles to save time and increase profit. And really applicable. Curiously enough, it's probably more applicable now than it was when I wrote it. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, for the folks listening, thank you guys so much for checking out Disc Media, a startup story. It has been a pleasure once again. And shameless plug of my own, if you guys get a chance, check out my book, 10 Topics to Help Managers, Leaders, and Entrepreneurs Get Better at What You Do. Available on my website, benolmos.com, but also on Amazon, as well as Barnes & Noble. And, as Wes said, and we say this all the time, we are on a mission this year to get to 100,000 subs by the end of 2026 on YouTube. We, as of the recording of this podcast, are just over 25,000. So we're a couple days late on Q1, but that's okay. We're going to try and make up for it in Q2. But share, like, subscribe, tell your mom, tell your dad. Most importantly, tell your enemies, because your enemies are the ones who are going to do something with the words you throw at them. So let them know as well. Thank you all for checking out this episode, and that's it for now. All right. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to Disc Media, a startup story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of Disc Media Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@discmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes, or information about our guests, by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.